Hi, my name is Jennifer Dotson, and I'm the founder and program coordinator for Highland Park Poetry. And happy Poetry Month. This is April 2016, and I am really excited to be celebrating Poetry Month with Michelle Brinkerhoff, who is a poet that I have long admired, her work. My special guest, Michelle Brinkerhoff. She won, as a brief background, she won a creative writing contest in high school and was published in every issue of the high school literary magazines, whether it was a poem, a drawing, or an essay. She also won a creative writing award given out to one senior in high school right before graduation. What high school was this?
Glenbrook South High School in Glenview, Illinois.
Oh, okay. So that's a big school.
Yeah.
So for one student to get the one, okay, that's great. You also won a partial scholarship for your poems to Knox College in Galesburg, where you attended for 3 years and majored in English, right? And have taken other courses at Chicago Columbia College. You've been published in several journals, including CRAM, or the Journal of Modern Poetry, as it's now called. But this is the CRAM anthology book published by Chicago Poetry Press by C.J. Laity. And then also numerous issues of Highland Park's own Journal of Arts and Letters, East on Central. And you volunteer for Chicago Slam Works.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
Well, Chicago Slam Works is a organization, a nonprofit organization that was started by Mark Kelly Smith of the Uptown Poetry Slam at the Green Mill that he's been hosting come this July for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So
time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, so he's kind of, his nickname, so to speak, is Slam Pappy, because it's sort of like the grandfather of bringing in the poetry slam movement to the masses, so to speak. And he and J.W. Basillo, who's the executive director of the Chicago Slam Works, put together a variety of events. They have different programs. They have one called Poets with Class, which is where they have poetry teaching artists come into various schools. And they have different sort of things, like they could do an assembly, or they could do, ongoing series at a school. They also have something called Slam University, or Slam U, which is a great program that I've been taking classes in, and that's sort of broken down into 101, 201, 301, 401, and so this
is to train poets to be
how to
slam
perform, how to
poetry artists.
Yeah, how to be slam poets. It's open to non-poets as well, those who want to just sort of get a better idea for like public speaking or creativity, expanding on their skills. I know some journalism people, some English teachers have taken it, and then so that's I have won the slam, so to speak, at the Green Mills Poetry, the Uptown Poetry Slam, but to their credit, I never won until I took Slam U.
So, all right, so the classes worked.
Yeah, so.
Well, now, tell me, so with slam poetry, is there really a difference between?
Well, slam is kind of a term that Mark Smith came up with. It's sort of like a bar game that evolved into this huge literary movement. Part of what they start their show off by saying is that, if you, it started in this bar in Chicago as a way to keep the audience engaged. So, and it's evolved into now there's the National Poetry Slam organization and National Poetry Slam. I'm actually qualified to take or compete, so to speak, on the team that they're going to be sending. And then Chicago is going to be hosting the National Poetry Slam. It rotates from city to city every year. This year it'll be in Atlanta in August, and then in 2018 it'll be back in Chicago. And then the other thing that I do with volunteering is, besides, I guess, my little laminated business card says it's social media executive, but so I'm on their Facebook page and on their Twitter account. Sometimes I'll live tweet, take photos and videos of different performers. And then they have a show coming up, opening in May, called This Great Nation, that, as one might suspect, is politically themed.
How appropriate for the season.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they've been doing, I think now, I feel bad if I quote this incorrectly, but about 5 shows that they've now been doing at Stage 773 in Lakeview on Belmont. And so I help sort of take tickets and an usher, so to speak. So, and that's a group of individuals that are wide variety of poets and actors. One of the actors is also a hip hop artist, and they've also had stage aerobatic. I mean, they've kind of had it all.
A broad spectrum included under the SLAM umbrella.
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that, but that's
very exciting, very exciting. But I think I would like to introduce the audience to sort of what it was that drew me to your poetry. I first heard you, I think it was, we were trying to remember the date, we can't remember how many years ago it was. It was several. And so, but it was at it was at a Highland Park Library event where it was an open mic, and you read, and I was just like, wow, this writer is awesome. So why don't you read a poem for us? That'd be great.
I guess I'll start with one that is kind of shows my vulnerable side, so to speak. It's called The Brightening. First, I was a girl. You know, that girl who silences herself and hides in the bathroom. I can still remember her saying, "Don't spend your life in the bathroom." But that was before their horrible looks and face ugliness and all that made me hate the mirror in the morning. There wasn't enough concealer in the world to cover up all I wanted to, but I tried anyways. While hiding beneath my hair, here in this photo, you can only see my left eye, which haunts me now. What could have been if I had pulled back the blonde curtain to show I was still there? Would anyone have stopped me? Before the razors, before the drugs, before giving away my hearts to anyone willing enough to look at me and say, "Yes, come out of the darkness. The world is ready to see your light." Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess one of the things that I really admire about your work is that sense of vulnerability in your poetry, that you are not afraid to let people see you kind of metaphorically naked.
Yeah.
And for me as a writer, I am so scared and so terrified, and that oftentimes I think that's why in my poetry I tend to use a lot of humor. Is because that's my protection, my armor against feeling vulnerable. So when I read your poetry or I listen to your poetry, I always think, oh, wow, I wish I could write like that.
Well, I do want to say that I admire your poetry so much, and actually one of the things that we talk about in Slam U, or is that humor is so hard to pull off for a lot of poets, and to do it well, which I really think that you do a great job with.
Thanks.
And especially with your performance style, you can totally see your theater background, so to speak. And I think that that's something that a lot of poets have trouble with, is being entertaining enough or getting the audience really engaged, and that hanging on the every word kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that's hard. It is a skill, and so obviously it's a very valuable thing that the Slam U is doing, because it's helping bridge the gap from the written word to the spoken word. That's very exciting. But why don't you read another one?
Okay. I guess if I can go for, should I read the one I read? Jennifer, you were so kind to invite me to participate in the Highland Park version of the Poetry Pentathlon, and one of the prompts, or I don't know how to put it, was to research a historical figure, and I was very inspired. I work at Evanston Hospital for the Radiation Safety Department, which is a little far-fetched to connect to poetry, but I sit in an office with an old X-ray tube, and so it kind of inspired me to research Madame Marie Curie. So when I researched her, I found out a lot of facts that I wasn't aware of. So she was Polish, and her maiden name I'm going to totally butcher, but the title of the poem is "A Century Later, Maria Sklodowska's Story Makes Sense" for Marie Curie. This is what I never heard. I never heard that you went to the battlefields to save those dying men, that you took your daughter at the tender age of 17 to the front lines to look into the body in a way most did not understand. How many legs and limbs and losses did you record from that fall day in 1914? When you looked for the bullets and bones, did you see their souls? In what language did you pray for them? What God did you turn to when they turned to you, begging and bleeding the way you begged for equipment, cars, money, anything, to see if your magic you had discovered could save your part of the world after so many had decided to break it open? Did you lock your hope in a lead box with your prize gram of radium? Did you hold it to your body on that train to Bordeaux, not knowing in the end that it was what would betray you? You gave a name for us for what we cannot see, unaware the price for our lives would end up being your own.
Oh boy.
Thank you.
That's a good one. Well, it's just very potent, thinking about, Madame Curie. And I like the whole thing about the image of the lead box. It makes you think about Pandora's box, too.
Yeah.
It's a very clear...
She used to, her journals and her cookbooks even are still radioactive.
Oh, my goodness.
And they have them locked up, so to think about... She coined the term radioactivity and all this stuff, amazing things that she did without knowing sort of the dangers associated, right. And why
Yeah.
I work for a department now called radiation safety. So,
what do you call that when it's like a sort of conflicting? I want to say, they make the joke about naval intelligence, isn't
yeah.
it? So radiation safety department seems to be the same thing,
right? Yeah.
Okay.
So we try to be as safe as we can with something,
Right.
So yeah. It's not the. I am very safe when I work.
That's good.
But I'm helping ensure that others are too. So, because it can, kill cancer cells and do all sorts of wonderful things, but you got to be careful with it too.
What is it? Is it Spider-Man's uncle who said,
Yeah.
"With great power comes great responsibility"? Yeah. So these are the words to live by, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Well, I would love to hear another poem. You've got several that you brought.
This one, my grandfather, both my grandfathers actually passed away somewhat recently. It was the 2-year anniversary of my mother's father, who just passed the other day, and he was a storyteller, and he also loved poetry, and he also had Alzheimer's, and in sort of towards the end of his life, some of the things that I was impressed by was his ability to remember poetry and various poems when he had forgotten so many other things associated with that horrible disease. But so this poem was also published in East and Central, and kind of, I don't know, I think explains itself. So okay. I'll just start. It felt appropriate that I fell in the muddy grass while walking in the light rain to my grandfather's casket at the cemetery. My stupid heels dug into the earth and my ankles wouldn't cooperate. Down I went, nylons, navy blue dress and all. I am always awkward, even in grief. It seems there are no exceptions. Still, he loved me this way. He taught me to laugh at myself, to shake it off, to not take life too seriously, to tell a story and make moments of potential pain something to share, something to smile over. So I do. I smile through my tears and bow my head in prayer, not to the God he believed in, but something divine nonetheless. I don't think he would mind, but I say amen just in case. It feels appropriate after all. That one gets me a little verklempt, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's very personal. As we were talking backstage, that I guess there's a term for confessional poetry. And you would identify most of your writing like that, or
I would say that I've always, especially admired confessional poets such as Sylvia Plath, Adrienne Rich, a whole lot of other. Anne Sexton, and I think I also really, in terms of contemporary poets, I really admire Sharon Olds, whose stories are very narrative, but also very raw and vulnerable. So I certainly don't mind being associated with, women who are considered confessional poets.
So were those authors that you mentioned, ones that you were reading at an early age and that inspired you in your writing? I mean, since you've been writing since high school.
Yeah, Shel Silverstein, I think, was who I was first introduced to at a very young age. Not quite a confessional poet, but I remember very clearly at my uncle owns a secondhand bookstore in Texas, in Houston, Becker's Books, which I remember coming across a copy of Ariel by Sylvia Plath, and it just sort of changed the whole game for me, so to speak.
Okay.
And it really had an impact on me. I feel, not to get, go off on a tangent too much, but I think that so often what's taught is male, authored poetry. And so to come across some very strong female figures who were sort of putting it upside down on its head really appealed to me.
I too was an English major, and I never thought I could write poetry when I was in school because it just seemed so lofty and male, and so to come out and be on the other side of academia and then encounter other female writers, like I think the one for me was Denise DeHamel, who also uses humor, but she, I was like, if she can write poetry, I can definitely write poetry.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned her, because I think, did she study at Chicago Columbia College? I'm trying to remember who it was, but one great thing about Paul Hoover was a teacher of mine, and when I took it, Paul, and he uses humor as well. So I think that definitely trickled down. A lot of my humor that's in my poetry, I think, is a little bit more dark, dark humor. But and Mark and JW, certainly, if you attend one of their shows at the Green Mill, they use a lot of humor. So, and I just think that it's amazing how much spoken word has allowed a variety of diverse voices to come forward and just really kind of tell their stories.
Well, now that brings up an interesting question for me, which is, since it is spoken word, does that, and since you're say you're preparing for a slam competition, what is your process? Do you start just talking, or does it start on the page, or a blend, or?
For me, actually, I know that a lot of writers vary in terms of their approach, but I think that the strongest work can stand up on the page and the stage. So I know that some poems are more suited for sort of quiet reflection, maybe. The reader might be invited into that poem in a more quiet setting, versus other poems kind of like grip you and shake you awake. You know, this is what you're supposed to, this is the message I want you to hear. And I think that if I write something, I can kind of determine whether, you know, this is something that would be best shared on a stage.
Okay.
But I think what's really fun for me sometimes is to take a poem that I've written just really to be a way of being cathartic for myself. You know, this is something that I'm struggling with, so I'm going to try to put it on paper, and then to just sort of take a deep breath and then read it on the stage, you know. So I would say that I probably should practice more than I do before I go up on the stage and just sort of let it all out there. But that's one of the great things about Slam U, and just attending a lot of shows that my friends, that I've been lucky enough to become friends with, like, you know, that inspire me. And so I find that I might pick up, you know, or even steal without realizing a line or two, or tone or cadence or something. So I just think that there is no real set process I have, but I do try to practice reading out loud to put into action some of the things that the people who teach Slam U that I've taken it from have suggested in terms of levels and left turns and things like from improv games and theater exercises to sort of really make the heightened language stand out more.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, no, but I guess I didn't know if the genesis of a poem starts verbally, or does it start with, you know, scribbling on a paper? I don't know if you use
for me it's
laptop
usually,
or pad or something like that.
Usually it's well, sometimes it's kind of funny. I've taken a lot of writing workshops with Wendy Anderson, and sometimes her poems I'll be doing on her prompts I've done on the you know, on my computer or whatever. But if something's sort of just in the back of my brain sort of percolating, I think I just reach for a notebook or napkin or whatever happens to be around, and then sort of work on it, retype it, you know, that sort of thing.
Well, I think we definitely have time for at least one more poem.
Okay. Is there a particular one that...
Was there the Needing?
Needing Goodness?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was a strong one.
This one, I kind of want to say, I didn't realize that I had another poet, Carrie Rudensky, and I'm butchering her name too, who had a poem that really inspired me, that I heard, and I didn't realize until I heard her perform it again, and I went, oh no, I totally, you know. Anyway, so I just want to mention her name, and it's called Needing Goodness. My hand hurts and throbs. I can tell there's something wrong. It's so much bigger than my other hand. When a friend presses her finger into my palm to release the pain, I hear hosannas on the highest. When her healer's thumb bone pinpoints the release of the Almighty rushing over me, and I want to cry out, and maybe I do, because this pain is real and not imagined. I want to take out the disease in me, or that is me, the I that I am. Maybe that's why I've always felt like myself more when slightly unhinged. I don't need saviors because I am my own savior. No, that's not right. I don't need saving. I don't need saving. The goodness is already here. I write poems on my palms and lift my hands up to the bellyfuls of rain, offer these words to God, hope my prayers will baptize me until I can actually forgive myself. I forgive myself. I proclaim it until I pretend I think it, as if my voice saying this isn't so strange to begin with, that it even sounds beautiful. So much beauty. I am swollen with love, and I open this hurting hand, maybe broken, maybe just bruised, but I open it, I open it. I say it until it's true.
Well, the exciting thing you mentioned is that you've got some upcoming readings that you're going to be performing in April?
In April 7th, I'm going to be performing with some other poets at Grassroots, which is a crazy, lovely store that's like rock and roll themed. They have clothing and wine and all sorts of stuff in Barrington.
So that's April 7th?
Yeah,
what time?
April 7th. Sorry, it's a Thursday evening, so it's 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And Terry's last name I already...
Lankarik?
Thank you. I butcher it as well. So she's running the show.
And what, did you have other events as well?
Well, I have one, but it'll probably be occurring post.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So when we...
Well, best of success on
Thank
your
you.
On the one that's already will have happened when this program.
Yeah, I will in May be competing at the Green Mill to see if I will have a chance. But
so now, do you know when will that be?
That unfortunately I forget off the top of my
head.
head.
But it's in May.
But
so
it's in May.
Are the Green Mill Poetry Slam events, are they Mondays or?
It's weekly Sunday nights.
Oh, Sunday night. Okay.
7 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
I confess that I have never been. And I'm like
if
really
you go, I will make sure to look for a seat for you.
Okay, all right. Are they really well attended and it's like always packed? Or?
Yeah, the Sundays that are right before when there's a Monday off for a holiday or whatever, those you really have to get there early for a seat. I would recommend like Labor Day, Memorial Day, because you have a lot of teachers who take advantage of the time off. So. Yeah. But otherwise I would say, sometimes there's standing room only, but
so now times. When you go, what do you bring prepared? How many poems do you need to prepare?
My friends laugh at me because I generally am disorganized and I bring a whole bunch of poems just sort of, and then I'm furiously flipping through them to see either if I sign up for the open mic, which is first, they do the open mic, then the feature, then the slam. Okay. So sometimes I slam, sometimes I just do the open mic. So
now in May you'll be competing to be on a team.
For a spot.
How many people are on the team usually?
I think 4 or 5. I want to say, I could be wrong. Sorry if I'm incorrect, but I want to say May 15th is the time that I'm signed up for. I'm just not entirely certain.
So, and is it really? Heavily competitive, or do they have like multiple? So will they be having multiple events?
Right, they will.
This? Okay.
Yeah, and so people can still compete for a chance to be on the team, and then once the team's formed, they'll write group pieces that they'll perform in August in Atlanta.
Well, now and then in Atlanta, do you do individual competition or is it just?
Well, now they have it, the National Poetry Slam. Competition, nationals as they refer to them or whatever, are for group pieces, but then there's also the individual, but that's on a different date and location. Well,
best of success to you on all of your upcoming readings, and we hope you get on the team and you go to Atlanta.
Yeah,
that would be very, very
fun,
exciting.
But